Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Board Games Unlocked. Today I'm doing a discussion over Clank Catacombs. This is the relatively newest edition of Clank. There has been many versions of this at this point. There was Clank deck building game, the very first one. Then there was Clank in Space, and then there was Clank Legacy, and now Clank Catacombs. So to open this whole discussion up, I should mention that I am actually not the biggest fan of Clank in general. It's kind of one of those games that I've always been on the outside, like the outlier of the game itself, because I know a lot of people really like it, and it just never clicked for me. The very first one that I played, I was like, yeah, this is all right, and I wasn't really a fan of kind of like the overall system, like with the deck building and then the stumble or the clank and then get in and get out mechanism. Just didn't really work for me. But then there was Clank in Space that I think was better, because the original Clank, my biggest issue with it was the fact that you could go in, get the very first artifact, even though it's worth the least amount of points, and get out, and because you escaped, it now speeds up the game and forces people to start. They have to go in and get a higher value and then also get out, and they can just die that way. I just didn't really like that system. And Clank in Space made it to where everyone had to go a certain distance to be able to get an artifact and then get out. So there was like, oh, there's no move 2 spaces, get an artifact and leave. You actually all had to breach a certain threshold. And I thought that was a lot better. And then Clank Legacy happened, where I thought the writing was fun and the legacy aspects of it were fun, but it still was original Clank. And also each game you didn't really know how to win, so it was kind of like a crapshoot. So we didn't really like Clank Legacy. That brings us to Clank Catacombs, which I have heard a lot of people really like. And while I think it is better than original Clank, I still am not a huge fan of Clank. And I have at this point narrowed down why I don't like it. And I think that while it is a deck builder and that inherently adds randomness, I really don't like the cube bag element of it. And because of that, it just adds a little bit too much randomness that for a 45-minute to a 90-minute game, it can just be very frustrating. But why get this one over any of the other ones? And the main thing is there are these, now they're in a bag here, but there are these catacomb tiles. And this I do really like. Like, I will say I do think this is better than original Clank, and hell, even better than Clank in Space. So if you're going to get any Clank, I would actually highly recommend this one. Because while you start on the same starting spot, which is basically this color-coded tile here that's pink or purple and blue, and everyone starts on the crypt, and then you go down. Then you start unraveling these tiles, and you just shuffle these tiles, and that's going to give you a sense of exploration. Out of all of them, this game has the most explorative kind of feel. Now, while the tiles aren't like super exciting, you never know where you're going to come across, and you have freedom in the orientation of how you want it to go. So it's not like every tile is going to be kind of different. So whenever you're running around, you can put them together so that it's like, oh, okay, well, I could go through, like, I could go, if I'm in this market tile, I could put it like this so that I have to go down and I can actually get a minor secret and then use a lockpick to get a tomb. Or, hey, I found one that actually takes us to the first artifact, but it costs 3, has 3 monsters. I don't have any swords. Do I risk going through that for 3 damage to get the artifact? It did have a bigger sense of exploration, and you actually kind of build out the catacombs in this case without really having to just kind of see the same board over and over. Because, that's the thing, is like it is like this. The other games are basically the same thing. And what's really cool about having these individual tiles is there are cards, very few, there's not a whole lot, But there are cards that kind of actually mess with that. There's when monsters come out, it causes the tiles to turn 180 degrees, so they kind of rotate, so you're not quite sure which direction you're going. I like the sense of you just have minor and major secrets just out, and you just, if you come across something, you just pick one up. It felt like you were actually exploring something, and that was neat. So that's the major gimmick of Clank Catacombs. Other than that, it's actually basically kind of the same thing. You're doing deck building, you have your stumbles and your things that cause noise, you put your noise in there. Whenever you refresh the market, if there's the dragon symbol, you do a dragon draw. And I just really don't like that. In fact, the last game of this that I played, and I mean, you could attribute it to, well, you took cards specifically that made noise. It's like, yeah, but I also took a lot of cards that didn't make noise. Or I took cards that specifically removed Clank and removed noise from it. But it's still just kind of annoying that throughout the entire game, someone had way more cubes in the bag than other players, but it was always their cubes that were still getting drawn. And it's like, this isn't even like fun. Like, yes, theoretically and statistically, your cubes should be getting drawn more, but yet it always happens to be me. So I'm always closer to dying more than anyone else, and you're the one that's been making all the noise. Why am I getting punished for that? I just find that cube bag to be completely random, and it puts arbitrary stress on a player that's like specifically trying to avoid making noise, but it's like, oh, you took a card that makes me put cubes out there. I mean, everyone has stumbles in their deck, so it's like you almost always will be putting cubes in unless you find ways to remove and trash cards. It's like, why am I being punished for your shitty gameplay? And why do I have to go out of my way to try and heal whenever I'm getting damaged for just bad cube pulls? Because there's no way to really mitigate the bag, because the Clank removal isn't from the bag, it's from the Clank board. So cubes that are out there that are ready to be put in, it's like, okay, you can take away stuff from that, but once they're in the bag, they're in the bag, and it's like, that's always just a frustrating part for me in this game, and all of the games, really. It's also way longer than I'd like for a game of this type. Like, it feels like it should be like a fun jaunt into the catacombs and exploring, but then it's like, all right, like, we're not really coming across any artifact tiles, so none of the artifacts are getting pulled out except for the 5. I guess I'll grab it and just try and make it out. And that is kind of a downside of the tile placement, is that because in the original games it was just a board. So the board, you would be like, okay, the 5's right here, the 7's over here, and all the way down at the bottom is the 20 or whatever it is. Okay, so I know exactly where I need to go to try and get it. But in the Catacombs one, the stack isn't seated. It's, you just shuffle the depths, which are the blue tiles. You shuffle those, and then they come out. So you might have games where it's like no one is really getting artifacts, and then it's like, oh, it happened to be me that found the first one, so I guess I'll pick it up and head on out, and then get my extra 20 points, and everyone else now has to try and find it, because whenever it comes around to my turn, I'm just drawing cubes. And then also, if the bag runs out of cubes, then it's like, okay, well, now everyone loses. So I guess I'm not a huge fan of that, where the tiles can just randomly never have artifacts in a timely manner. So it could just be completely random on who happens to get lucky, and that could be kind of annoying. Or if you're playing a big multiplayer game and only 2 people find artifacts, and it's like, okay, well, I guess the other 2 people can just kind of like fuck off, or they really have to try and find one, because you can't escape unless you have an artifact. And even if you get knocked out in like the safety area, because every game has like a safety spot you can try and get to, you won't get the bonus points, but you can still score. It's like you have to have found an artifact. And if the tiles are random, and not every tile obviously has an artifact on it, you might just get lucky and be like, okay, well, you found one, and now you're on your way out because you don't want to find another one. You're just trying to rush the end game. So I have to keep scrambling and hope I don't take any damage from the draw bag. And so you just kind of are top decking. And then also the randomness of your deck. If you're not drawing any movement, like you're like, I really need to move. For some reason I can't, because apparently I'm an idiot explorer or dungeon delver. My entire hand is all buy cards. Okay, that's another round of that I have to try and survive. And then, okay, I got some movement. I only got one, but that gets me to the next tile. And there's no artifact here, so I can't leave. Again, I don't think these games are bad. I just think that for me, in a game of this style, it's too random. There's too many elements of randomness. Now, like, I'm fine with the deck being random because it's not like my issue with randomness. If you watch a lot of like games with dice or deck building games, like if you watch my discussions or run-throughs for those, my issues with randomness stem from I'm fine with randomness being up front, and then I determine what I can do with what I have versus randomness dictating if I succeed or not. So that's the two elements. Like in a deck builder, which I love being, because I don't have a predetermined, like I don't have it in my head yet that I can do something. So I haven't convinced myself, or I haven't been like, ooh, I really want to do this. So it's like, okay, like discard my hand, next turn, here's my hand of 5. Okay, shit, I really wanted a movement, I didn't get one, what can I do with my hand now? Versus the opposite, where it's like, I'd really like to move, let's hope this die lets me, tells me if I can or not. And it can't, so now I'm frustrated. That's my difference here. So I can handle the deck being random, because that's also a byproduct of my deck building. It's like, okay, I actively didn't pick cards that let me draw, or I didn't pick cards that have a lot of movement. And to be fair, like the time where you can't get a move or something is very rare. There are a lot of cards with movement. But in the latest example of where I was like 2 spaces away from the exit, and I had, like, literally, this was the last game I played of this. I was 2 spaces away from the exit, because the other players had left already. So I was trying to get out. I was in the safe zone, so I knew I was going to be able to still score. But it's like, all right, well, they all got the 20 points. I don't know if my deck is going to be good enough to compete against that. And I was 2 spaces away, and my hand had 0 movement at all. It was actually it was the worst hand I probably had drawn since the beginning of the game. It was just happened to be just super shitty. Any other game, it's like, yeah, that kind of sucks, but because there's a pressure on it, now I can't do anything. I'm like, okay, I've healed up a little bit. Yeah, I can still die here, but maybe I'll get lucky. And then it went to the next player's turn. They drew from the bag 1 black and 3 red, which I was the red player, and I had 3 health, and I died. And it's like, that's just shitty. Like, that's just so anticlimactic and frustrating to be like, not only did I get hosed off the bag draw, I got hosed off of my own deck, and I think, it was still like, okay, I didn't even really get that good of an artifact. I kind of had to just grab one and then really rush out. But, I mean, I was still in the safe zone, so I was able to get rescued and score. My score was actually still really high, surprisingly, because I happen to have a lot of high-value cards, but it was still like, I don't really care, because it's like the theme of the game is to get in, get an artifact, and get out, and I died, because it feels just so deflating. But yeah, still, out of all of that, everything that I'm saying about this, I'm not keeping this. Like, this isn't like, for me, it wasn't like, oh, I really hate Clank and Clank in Space, but this game completely fixes it. It's still Clank. So, if you love Clank, and like if you're tired of the staleness of the first one and the expansions you've played of Clank in Space, I would give Clank Catacombs a shot. It does do enough to kind of flip it on its head with the extra elements. There's lock picks that that's another resource you can manage to get to various locations to make it easier to get to spots, but you unlock it for other people, to unlock rescue prisoners, to get open chests, to get secrets and money and stuff like that. The sense of the tiles is still fun and gimmicky. It is fresh, and this has a lot more replayability than I would even say Clank and Space have. Technically has all of those have more replayability than Clank Legacy because that's a legacy game. And I believe in the rulebook it mentions, the party in the Catacombs, so the Clank Adventuring Party. There are rules that allow you to mix that. I've never had the Adventuring Party, but you can mix that in here. So that's a thing. Yeah, to mix Clank Catacombs with the Adventuring Party expansion. I think that's the only expansion you can mix with this. Set up the fixed game board of Clank is replaced with tiles. Okay, never mind. I thought they have these little spots in the rulebook. I thought it was talking about how you can mix the original Clank with this, but it doesn't look like it. Leave the board behind with Clank Catacombs, a standalone deck-building adventure. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. On a scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to give Clank Catacombs... I'm feeling... between a 6 and a 7. Because in my scale, which is the only correct scale, 5 is average. So 6 is slightly above average, 7 is good, 8 great, 9 like excellent, 10 perfect. I think I'm gonna give it... I'm gonna be generous. I'm gonna give it a 7. Like, even if it has all the randomness, I still like the tiles. The deck building is still solid. Whenever it was my turn, I was never like, can this be over? Like, it never had that feeling. It wasn't until the very end that I was like, that's why I don't like this game. So this did have the exploration. I was still kind of excited to play it, but yeah, whenever it came to the end, and I was like, that's right, I forgot that the bag is very annoying. But because of the new tiles and the freshness, and like, it has the replayability with the deck building and the replayability with the tiles, this has a lot more to it. I think they could support this with expansions to even make it even more fresh, more so than the other ones. So I'm going to be a little bit nicer, and I'm going to give this a 7 out of 10, which is good. But yeah, so that's my thoughts on Clank Catacombs. Let me know what you think of the game in the comments below. Other than that, like, comment, share, and subscribe, and have a wonderful whatever time of day it is for you.
Hey everyone, thank you for watching, and I really hope that you enjoyed the video. If you would like to see more of my content, go ahead and click that subscribe button and the bell to be notified whenever I upload any new content. If you feel like supporting the channel, you can go ahead and click that Patreon link to be taken to my Patreon, and any help is truly appreciated. Other than that, stick around for any other run-throughs or reviews or cool top 10s or whatever I feel like putting on. Other than that, like, comment, share, and subscribe, and have a wonderful whatever time of day it is for you.